The human skull cracked sickeningly as Lawrence slammed the dead Tholian's head into the wall, splattering purple blood. He wasn't sure if the Xeno filth could hear him in death, but he still snarled into the ruined face. "That's what you get for 50 years, you scaly fucks." Lawrence's vision blurred as he staggered back from the carnage, his atrophied muscles aching from the brief skirmish. It had only taken a few savage strokes to dispatch the Tholian boarding party that had tried to scuttle the Endeavour upon detecting its automated revival systems powering up. But those few brutal moments of violence had completely drained him after 5 decades of cryo-sleep. "Vital signs critical," the ship AI Aiden intoned clinically. "You need to lie down, Captain Sullivan. After 50 years in cryostasis, your body—" "Show me the Tholian transmissions again," Lawrence panted, dragging himself to a console and slumping against it. "Show me what those bastards did to Earth." The view screen flickered to life, replaying the intercepted alien comms Aiden had decoded. Visions of scorched continents, sprawling slave camps, and mass executions made Lawrence clench his jaw so hard he thought his teeth would shatter. The Endeavour had gone dark in the opening salvo of the war, its crew placed in emergency cryopods when the fusion core was hit. By the time the backup systems repaired the ship, it was too late. The Tholians had won. As the grim footage played, Aiden outlined the situation in its flat, dispassionate tones. The once mighty Terran space fleet had been reduced to atoms. Xeno forces occupied the mother world, its great cities now unrecognizable ruins. Pockets of human resistance still clung to survival in the fringe systems, but they were scattered, leaderless lambs ripe for slaughter. "We're it, Aiden," Lawrence croaked. "We're all that's left of the human race as we knew it." "I'm afraid that is an accurate assessment, sir." For a moment, Aiden's voice almost sounded sorrowful. "Your orders?" Lawrence hauled himself off the console, his legs trembling with the effort. Duty, rage. It was all that had kept him going those first few awful hours. But now, a new emotion stirred in his gut, bright and hot. Hope. The Tholians thought they'd won. That humanity was broken. They were wrong. Humanity would never yield, not while one man still drew breath, and Lawrence would rally whoever was left, from the shattered remnants of the mother world to the distant mining colonies. He'd reforge them into a weapon that would incinerate the Tholian Empire down to its component atoms. It didn't matter if it took a day or a decade. The Xenos would burn for what they'd done. Aiden was still awaiting his orders. Lawrence limped for the courier ship in the Endeavour's battered shuttle bay, his voice low and harsh. "Set a course for the fringe colonies. It's time to start the Second Terran Crusade." Aiden's scanners pinged an alert as the Endeavour slid into orbit around the mining colony. The ship's cloaking systems were engaged, but Lawrence knew they weren't foolproof. "Captain, sensors detect a Tholian patrol ship on the far side of the planet," Aiden reported. Lawrence pulled up the tactical display, his brow furrowing as he studied the enemy vessel's position. Even with the Endeavour's advanced stealth tech, they couldn't risk a direct confrontation. Not yet. "Prep the stealth shuttle," he ordered. "I'm going in alone. If I'm not back in 48 hours, get the hell out of here and find another colony." "Sir, I must advise against this course of action," Aiden said. "In your current physical state." "Can it, Aiden?" Lawrence snapped. "I didn't come all this way to sit on my ass and wait for the Tholians to find us." The shuttle ride to the surface was tense and quiet. Lawrence double-checked his equipment as he descended through the thin atmosphere. Pulse rifle, rations, medkit, and a holomap of the colony's layout. The mining settlement came into view as he broke through the clouds. A ramshackle collection of prefab structures huddled around the yawning maw of the main mineshaft. Lawrence set the shuttle down in a narrow ravine a few clicks from the colony's perimeter. He'd have to hoof it the rest of the way to avoid detection. The terrain was rough and rocky, the thin air making his lungs burn with each step. By the time he reached the settlement's outskirts, his legs felt like rubber, and his heart was hammering in his chest. He was just about to slip past the perimeter fence when a voice called out from the shadows. That's far enough, friend. Drop your weapon and turn around slow. Lawrence froze, his hand tightening on his rifle. He'd expected to run into colonists, but not so soon. He did as the voice instructed, letting his gun fall to the ground as he turned to face his challenger. A man stepped out from behind a boulder, his own weapon trained on Lawrence's chest. He was older, with a grizzled beard and a face lined by hardship, ex-military, judging by his stance and the way he held his rifle. "Name's Galen," the man said, "and you've got about 10 seconds to tell me who the hell you are and what you're doing here before I put a hole in you." Lawrence held up his hands, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Captain Lawrence Sullivan, Terran Space Fleet. I'm here to help." Galen snorted. "The fleet's dead, friend, has been for a long time. Try again." "The Endeavour went dark during the initial invasion," Lawrence explained. "We were hit hard, had to go into emergency cryo. By the time we woke up, it was too late." Galen's eyes narrowed, but he lowered his rifle a fraction. "Say I believe you. What's your plan, Captain? You think one ship can take on the whole Tholian Empire?" "No," Lawrence said, "but I think we can hurt them. Make them bleed, and I'm going to need your help to do it." Galen stared at him for a long moment, then lowered his weapon with a sigh. "All right, Captain, let's talk." As they walked into the colony, Galen filled Lawrence in on the situation. The Tholians had been using the settlement as a slave labor camp, forcing the colonists to mine the planet's rich mineral deposits. They were brutal taskmasters, quick to punish anyone who stepped out of line. But there was a glimmer of hope. Deep in the mines, the colonists had discovered a rare crystal that seemed to disrupt the Tholians' psionic abilities. If they could get their hands on enough of it, they might be able to create weapons that could even the odds against the alien invaders. Lawrence felt a surge of excitement at the prospect. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A chance to strike back at the bastards who had destroyed their world. Over the next few days, he and Galen began to plan and prepare. They trained the able-bodied colonists in guerrilla tactics and sabotage, turning them from broken slaves into a resistance force. Lawrence taught them how to make improvised explosives and jam Tholian comms, while Galen drilled them in hand-to-hand combat and marksmanship. It was grueling work, but with each passing day Lawrence could see the fire returning to the colonists' eyes. They were ready to fight, to take back what was theirs. And when the time came, when they finally launched their attack on the Tholian overseers, Lawrence would be right there beside them, leading the charge. The Second Terran Crusade had begun. The day of reckoning was upon them. Lawrence and Galen picked their team carefully, choosing only the most skilled and stealthy among the colonists. They couldn't afford any mistakes, not with so much at stake. The plan was simple. Infiltrate the mines, steal the crystals, and get out before the Tholians knew what hit them. They entered the tunnels under cover of darkness, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The air was thick with the stench of sweat and fear, but they pressed on, determined to see their mission through. Lawrence took point, his rifle at the ready, while Galen watched their backs. The others followed close behind, their eyes wide with a mix of terror and exhilaration. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, a labyrinth of twists and turns that threatened to swallow them whole. But Lawrence had memorized the route, and he led them forward with grim determination. They had to hurry. Every second counted. At last they reached the storage chamber. The crystals glittered in the dim light, their facets casting eerie shadows on the walls. Lawrence motioned for the others to start loading them into their packs, his heart pounding in his chest. They were so close now, so close to striking a blow against their oppressors. But then a sound from the darkness, a hiss low and menacing. Lawrence spun around, his rifle raised, and found himself face to face with a nightmare made flesh. The Tholian warrior towered over him, its chitinous armor gleaming in the shadows. Its eyes burned with a fierce intelligence, and Lawrence could feel the weight of its psionic power pressing down on his mind. He fired, but the warrior was too fast. It dodged the shots with inhuman grace and closed the distance between them in an instant. Lawrence barely had time to raise his rifle before the Tholian was on him, its claws tearing at his flesh. Galen leapt into the fray, his own weapon blazing. The warrior turned to face him, its mind lashing out with a psychic assault that brought Galen to his knees. Lawrence could feel the pressure building in his own skull, threatening to crush him like an eggshell. In a last desperate gambit, he reached for one of the crystals. He could feel its power thrumming beneath his fingers, a wild, untamed energy that set his nerves on fire. With a roar of defiance, he unleashed that power in a blinding burst of light and sound. The Tholian reeled back, its psionic grip faltering. Galen surged to his feet and charged, his blade flashing in the darkness. The warrior tried to defend itself, but it was too late. Galen's sword found its mark, and the Tholian crumpled to the ground, its lifeblood pooling on the stone. But even as it fell, Lawrence could feel the ripples of its psychic distress call echoing through the tunnels. The patrol ship would be alerted. They had to get out now. They raced back through the mines, their hearts pounding in their chests. The alarms began to sound as they neared the surface, a deafening klaxon that set their teeth on edge. The colonists were waiting for them, armed and ready for battle. But Lawrence knew it wouldn't be enough, not against the firepower of a Tholian ship. He looked up at the sky, his jaw clenched tight. The ship was descending, its weapons already charging. In a matter of moments, it would reduce the colony to ashes. Unless he stopped it. The plan formed in his mind in an instant, a desperate, reckless gambit. But it was their only chance. He turned to Galen, his eyes hard as flint. "Get these people to safety. I'll take care of the ship." Galen opened his mouth to protest, but the look on Lawrence's face stopped him cold. He nodded once, his expression grim. Lawrence sprinted for the shuttle, his heart hammering in his chest. He had one warhead left, one chance to end this. The Endeavour was waiting for him in orbit, her weapons primed and ready. He would take her in close, ram the Tholian ship with everything he had, and when the time was right, he would detonate the nuke, taking the bastards with him. Lawrence's boots pounded the Endeavour's deck as he raced for the bridge, his heart hammering. Galen and the colonists would have to hold out on their own against the Tholian ground troops. He had a bigger problem to deal with. "Aiden, prep the nuke," he barked as he slid into the command chair. "We're taking out that patrol ship." "Warhead armed and ready," Aiden reported. "But, Captain, I'm detecting multiple warp signatures entering the system. It's a whole damn Tholian fleet." Ice flooded Lawrence's veins. The patrol ship must have gotten off a distress call. Even if he nuked it, the colony would be swarmed in minutes. Despair clawed at him. It couldn't end like this, not when they were so close. There had to be a way. A memory flashed through his mind, his old academy instructor, droning on about the tactics used in the First Tholian War. Something about an EMP strike frying the bug circuits. "Aiden, new plan," Lawrence snapped. "We're going to overload the reactor core, turn the Endeavour into one big EMP bomb. It'll knock out the Tholian systems, buy the colonists some time to evacuate." "Reactor modifications will take approximately 6.2 minutes, Aiden said. "The fleet will be in weapons range in 8.4. "Then you better work fast." Lawrence's fingers flew over the console, rerouting power and rewriting safety protocols. Aiden's hollow avatar flickered beside him, its normally placid face etched with concentration. The Endeavour shuddered as Lawrence pushed her engines to the limit, racing to get into position. On the view screen, the Tholian fleet grew from a cluster of distant specks to a swarm of angular, chitinous ships, their hulls glinting with malevolent purpose. "Reactor overload in 90 seconds, Aiden announced. "Optimal detonation point calculated." "Patch me through to Galen," Lawrence ordered. The rebel leader's face appeared on a secondary screen, his features taut with strain. "Galen, listen to me," Lawrence said. "A Tholian fleet is about to hit Atmo. You need to get everyone to the shuttles and get the hell off this rock now." Galen's eyes widened. "What about you?" "I'll buy you as much time as I can." Lawrence forced a grim smile. "Been an honor fighting with you." Galen started to say something, but Lawrence cut the feed. He couldn't afford to hesitate, not now. The Tholian ships loomed before him, their weapons glowing with sickly green light. Lawrence's hand hovered over the reactor control. "Aiden, it's been one hell of a ride." "The honor has been mine, Captain," the AI replied softly. Lawrence squeezed his eyes shut. He thought of Earth, of the billions who had died under Tholian claws, of the brave few still fighting, still clinging to hope. They would have that hope again. His hand came down on the control. The Endeavour's reactor howled, the sound rising to a deafening crescendo. Blinding light seared through the bridge, searing heat, flensing Lawrence's flesh. And then nothing but a brilliant, all-consuming white. The Endeavour's reactor core pulsed with an otherworldly glow, tendrils of energy lashing out as the overload sequence neared completion. Lawrence gripped the command chair, his knuckles white, his face bathed in the eerie light. This was it. The end of the line. But if he was going to die, he'd make damn sure he took those Tholian bastards with him. The ship shuddered violently, the hull groaning under the stress. Warning klaxons blared, the sound drowned out by the deafening roar of the straining reactor. Aiden's voice cut through the chaos, calm and resolute. "Overload in 3, 2, 1. A blinding flash erupted from the Endeavour's core, a tsunami of electromagnetic energy that rippled outward in an ever-expanding sphere. It slammed into the Tholian fleet, the alien ships convulsing as their systems fried under the onslaught. Shields flickered and died, engines sputtered, weapons fell silent. The once mighty warships drifted helplessly, reduced to little more than floating tombs. On the planet's surface, the Tholian ground forces fared no better. Their high-tech armor and weapons, rendered useless by the EMP, offered no protection against the vengeful colonists. Galen led the charge, his makeshift blade cleaving through chitinous flesh and bone. The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation, years of pent-up rage and grief fueling every blow. The battle was short but brutal. When the dust settled, the Tholians lay broken and bleeding, their bodies littering the barren ground. Galen stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving, his armor slick with alien blood. They had won, but at what cost? He turned to the survivors, his voice hoarse from shouting, "Gather everyone, we're getting off this rock." They moved quickly, scavenging what supplies they could from the fallen Tholians. Galen led them to a hidden hangar, where a small fleet of mining ships sat waiting. The colonists boarded the vessels, cramming themselves into every available space. These weren't warships, but they would have to do. As they took off, the sky above them lit up with a searing brilliance. Galen watched through the viewport as the Endeavour, now a flaming wreck, plummeted towards the planet's surface. His heart clenched as he thought of Lawrence, of the sacrifice he had made for them all. "I'll make sure it wasn't in vain," Galen whispered. "I swear it." The mining ship slipped past the drifting Tholian fleet, the chaos of the EMP blast providing the perfect cover for their escape. Galen plotted a course for a distant star system, where rumors hinted at a growing human resistance. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. In the depths of Tholian space, aboard the crippled flagship, a lone transmission crackled through the static. The Tholian Emperor's voice, cold and filled with malice, echoed through the bridge. "Hunt down the human filth," he hissed. "Exterminate them, let none survive." The order spread like wildfire, a rallying cry for the shattered Tholian forces. They would not rest until every last human was wiped from the face of the galaxy, until their empire was secure once more. And so as Galen and the colonists charted a course through the stars, they knew that their journey had only just begun. The Tholians would be coming for them, relentless and merciless in their pursuit. But they would not go quietly into the night. They would fight tooth and nail until their last breath, for they were humanity's last hope, the flickering candle in an endless dark, and they would not let that light be extinguished. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.